I want to bring in a special guest, our jury consultant, Susan Constantine. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to lay the foundation like this to say, we know that the judge in yesterday and today has been asking questions to figure out which jurors from the panel are automatically disqualified or exempted. So some of the exemptions in South Carolina, for instance, are persons 65 years of age or older who wish to be excused, the primary caretaker of a disabled person, persons with legal custody and duty of care of a child if the child's under 7, if somebody is an officer at a state penitentiary, if they've served on a circuit court jury duty during the past 2 years, etc. So these are some reasons why we know the court's gonna inquire, get some proof, and then say you're excused. But here's what I really want to ask you, Susan, because those things really aren't that unusual. When they were asked, for instance, about whether or not anyone had heard about the boating incident involving Paul, who is Alex Murdaugh's son, who was in the boating accident and a girl was killed, everybody in the courtroom stood up. So in a small community like this, how in the world can you get a fair and impartial jury to hear this case?
Yeah, well, you know, it is an art and a science altogether, but I really want to know more about what they believe and what their belief system is. I want them to give me examples of situations of where they exercise certain things that the questions that were asked of them in the jury during Voir Dire. So I want to get to know who they are, not so much about, you know, what their interests are, and those are really important, as we know. But I want to know why they're important, because the most important thing is we don't want to prejudice the jury, right? So if there's some sort of things that are in their background, is it going to be projected on the other jurors, especially when they go into juror deliberation? So all of these things are really are very important. But for me as a trial consultant, I want to know what makes a person tick. I want to know what their belief system is, and I want to know what shaped that belief system. That's more important to me.
Susan, what great insight. So when you want to know about a belief system of a particular potential juror, what kind of question can you ask, or how can you glean that information without just coming out and saying, what's your belief system? We know that's not effective. So how would you do that?
Sure. So thank you. That's a great question. I'm going to hitchhike off from information they've already given me. So if they say, well, you know, my interest is, or I have experience in XYZ, then I'm going to hitchhike off from that and ask them, tell me more about that. Tell me more about your experience. So instead of coming out with a cold question, I am going to use minimal encouragers. I don't ask the questions, but this is what I would advise the attorneys to use: those minimal encouragers, hitchhike off from words and phrases, etc., and then let them answer the question without interruption. And then from there, then you can move into other areas. So then you can get a little bit deeper into their thought process.
And what's interesting is Judge Newman did that to an extent. For instance, when he asked if anyone knew Alex Murdaugh, and a number of jurors raised their hands, he would ask, in what capacity, how? Tell me more about that experience. Tell me, for instance, one had retained the law firm. Who represented you? Was it Alex Murdaugh, et cetera, et cetera? So it got more of that information to come to the forefront. All right, my last question for you is, you know, the other part of this, in South Carolina, the court TV correspondents interviewed different people in the community, and some people really viewed the Murdaughs as a pillar of the community and an institution and a good thing. But then there were others who truly really indicated they were fairly hated in the community. So when you have that kind of dichotomy, how do you bring that to the table with potential jurors?
Well, when I think about that, that's helping me to decide who I want on my jury pool, right? They've already given me information that you've got two different rules of thinking, right? There are people out there that may have a problem, like, for example, for the state, for the prosecution, I'd be looking for more middle-class people. Maybe there's people that are wealth aversion, that they don't like people that use money and status for power and control. There are those that don't like that, right? They have an aversion to it. So listen to what they have to say. I'm a big proponent, and people will give you the information you need. Just use the information that they've given you and use it to your advantage. If it's for the defense, if they really, really like them, they're the ones that are more in that gray area. They don't look at things black and white. There was always like what ifs or possibilities. Those are the ones I would be looking for the defense. So all of this information is powerful. And not only that, as you know, Ashley, in these big cases, we're looking at how those potential jurors, what they're posting on Facebook and any other social medias, what are groups that they belong to, and how are they actually speaking to it. So this gives you information about their thought process and their value system. That's what we're looking at, their value system. But this is a lot about likability, right? So, I mean, Murdaugh is very well known. His family is very well known. Those that are very prestigious, they might, think that's pretty cool to get to be part of a jury that they want to encourage. The verdict is not guilty. But on the other hand, there's the complete opposite. So it'd be interesting to find out what is the percentage. Was it 50-50 or, how many people really didn't like them?
And you're right, social media, a great source of information. And I was just kidding when I said one more question because you've given me more food for thought. So I want to watch together what one of the attorneys commented on about jury selection and then ask you a follow-up question.
Sure.
Perhaps the most interesting, compelling moment this morning was when the judge asked for a show of hands, or rather everyone who had seen or heard something about this case stand up. And everyone in the courtroom, 105 or so people, all stood up in unison. So that is a tribute, I guess, to the press coverage and the social media coverage and just the size of this county and the spread of info.
Okay, Susan, about 105 people in the courtroom all stood up when the question was asked. That was the attorney for Connor Cook that we just heard from. So do you think, knowing that information, that this should have been moved to a different venue because the community knows this family?
It is my belief, yes. Or to pull in jurors from another jurisdiction into that county. So yes, I mean, when you think about it, when every person raised their hand, that's the majority effect, right? That's what we're looking at, how we can sway a panel, right? When we have the majority effect of jurors that believe or support one side or the other. That's very dangerous to me. And I do like the show of hands because I want to see who hasn't raised their hand. And so I can follow up with another question, right? So those that didn't raise their hand, I wanted to know, I want to know more about them. So this is powerful. I take a lot of my training and investigative interrogation, interviewing training, and all of this applies to trial consulting. Because the whole point is to elicit information from people so that we can gather intel, so we know how to shift and move our questioning.
It makes good sense. Susan Constantine, thank you for waiting today. We wanted to get some of the court first, and we really appreciate your time and your expertise here on Court TV. Thank you.